On the 10th floor of the Bangladesh Bank, an ordinary printer suddenly wasn't working properly. The bank staff assumed it was a common problem just like any other day. When the printer was successfully fixed, the staff was suddenly shocked. It printed 35 transaction records, totaling $951 million, being transferred from Bangladesh Bank's account to several unknown accounts. But how? It started a year ago. In January 2015, 10 suspicious emails purposely sent into 16 different employees of the Bangladesh Bank to seek job opportunities with links to malware. A job seeker calling himself as Rasel Alam, the email included a link to a website from where to download his CV and cover letter from. One person inside the bank fell for the trick, downloaded the documents, and got infected with the viruses hidden inside. Soon, the bank's entire network was being infiltrated. But the bank's staff didn't know that. Nothing happened when he downloaded the CV and cover letter form. The hacker stealthily hopping from computer to computer, working their way towards the digital vaults and the billions of dollars they contained. And then the hacker stopped and do nothing. They wait for a year to create a perfect plan of the biggest robbery bank in history. The plan begins in May 2021. The hacker went to RCBC Bank in Manila, Philippines. They created 4 accounts with their initial $500 deposit. In hindsight, there were some suspicious signs. The driver's licenses used to set up the accounts were fake, and the applicants all claimed to have exactly the same job title and salary, despite working at different companies. But no one seemed to notice. For months, they left the account untouched for a purpose. While waiting for the perfect time, the hackers studied the behavior of Bangladesh Bank staff for years, and they prepared for the flawless plan. On Thursday, February 4, 2016, at 20:36, the hackers began executing their heist. 35 transactions totaling $951 million, which comprised almost the entire contents of Bangladesh Bank in the New York Fed account, were initiated. The thieves were on their way to a massive payday. Due to the malware injected into Bangladesh Bank software, the hackers gained total control over a key component of the heist, which is the SWIFT network. But what is SWIFT network? SWIFT stands for the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunications, which is a vast messaging network used by financial institutions to quickly, accurately, and securely send and receive information, such as money transfer instructions. Basically, it was a method to transfer your money across the globe via a standardized code system. The hackers used SWIFT network to give 35 SWIFT payment instructions to the Federal Reserve Bank in New York. But why the Fed? Because Bangladesh keeps its US dollar in the Fed account for international transaction. The 35 payment instructions was transferred into various accounts all over the world. In fact, it would have drained the entire account of Bangladesh Bank at the New York Fed. When the Fed received the instruction, without any hesitation, the Fed started to begin the request. The Fed staffs have no suspicion of this transaction. This is the power of SWIFT network. More than 11,000 global SWIFT member institutions sent an average of 44.8 million messages daily through the network, so we can say the credibility is incredibly high. But why the Bangladesh Bank didn't notice this transaction on the next day after the hackers started the heist? In Bangladesh, they had different weekend from us. They have weekend on Friday and Saturday. Due to the majority of this country is Muslim, and Muslims consider Friday as special from religious point of view, so when the hackers began the heist, they have 2-day run to get the money. But they still had one final hurdle to clear. The printer inside highly secure room on the 10th floor of the Bangladesh Bank. Bangladesh Bank had created a paper backup system to record all transfers made from its accounts. This record of transactions risked exposing the hackers' work instantly, and so they hacked into the software, controlling it, and took it out of action. And on the morning of Sunday, the director of the bank found that the printer was not working. He thought that it was just a common problem, but after they fixed it, suddenly, dozens of suspicious transactions spit out from the printer. It was the $951 million transaction record. They were in panic and trying to contact SWIFT and the Fed in hurry. But again, the hacker had a perfect plan. They could not contact the Fed because the Fed was closed. This is because United States had weekend on Sunday. So there was no one that could respond to the Bangladesh bank's call, which means the hacker had an additional day for executing the escape plan. In that time, they already successfully transferred $951 million to several accounts, including the 4 account that was created a long time ago in the RCBC branch bank in Manila. When the hackers checked their transactions one more time, they were shocked because they only got $101 million instead of $951 million. They were confused because they had flawlessly planned this heist. But the hacker didn't notice one thing, which is the default alarm of the Fed. The Fed has a default alarm to stop any transaction that has the word Jupiter. Why? Because Jupiter was the name of a sanctioned Iranian shipping vessel. But what is the correlation between Jupiter and the transaction? The hackers didn't notice one thing. A year ago, they created 4 accounts in the RCBC branch bank in Manila, and surprisingly, it was on the Jupiter Street. Yes, it contained the word Jupiter. Just the mention of the word Jupiter was enough to set alarm bells ringing in the Fed's automated computer systems, and the transaction was halted. But 5 transactions worth $101 million crossed this hurdle. However, the hackers faced another challenge. The $101 million was now an RCBC bank in Manila, and Monday had arrived. It was the perfect opportunity for RCBC bank staff in Manila to prevent the heist. They could easily identify the 4 suspicious bank accounts and freeze them, but the staff couldn't do that because the RCBC bank in Manila was closed due to the Chinese New Year, and again, it was because of the perfect plan, so they had another additional day to execute the whole plan. $20 million from $101 million was transferred to a Sri Lanka charity. It was named the Shalika Foundation. It was purposely arranged by the hackers' associates as a channel for the stolen funds. But here again, a tiny detail derailed the hackers' plans. The transfer was made to the Shalika Foundation, not Shalika Foundation. So, an eagle-eyed bank employee spotted the spelling mistake and reversed the transaction, but they still had $81 million successfully transferred. Not what the hackers were aiming for, but the lost money was still a huge blow for Bangladesh, a country where 1 in 5 people lives below the poverty line. Now, they're figuring out how to pull off the heist without getting caught, and they found casino. But why casino? The idea of using casinos was to break the chain of traceability. Once the stolen money had been converted into casino chips, gambled over the tables and changed back into cash, it would be almost impossible for investigators to trace it. From $81 million, $50 million was deposited in accounts at the Solitaire and the Midas Casino. The other $31 million was paid to a Chinese man called Zhu Wei Kong, who's believed to have left town on a private jet and never been heard of since. But what about the risks? Aren't the thieves in danger of losing the loot across the casino tables? Firstly, instead of playing in the public parts of the casino, the thieves booked private rooms and filled them with accomplices who would play at the tables. This gave them control over how the money was gambled. Secondly, they used the stolen money to play baccarat, a wildly popular game in Asia, but also a very simple one. There are only 3 outcomes on which to bet, and a relatively experienced player can recoup 90% or more of their stake. It was an excellent strategy for the hackers. Now, the criminals could launder the stolen funds and look forward to a healthy return, but to do so, it would take careful management of the players and their bets. And of course, it took time. For weeks, the gamblers sat inside Manila's casinos and waited for the perfect time. Meanwhile, Bangladesh bank staff was catching up. Its officials had visited Manila and identified the money trail, but when it came to the casinos, they hit a brick wall. Because at that time, the Philippines' gambling houses were not covered by money laundering regulations. But fortunately, the bank's officials managed to recover $16 million of the stolen money from one of the men who organized the gambling jaunts at the Midas Casino, named Kim Wong. He was charged, but the charges were later dropped. However, the rest of the money, $34 million, was still on the hacker's hand. The investigator had one huge question: who was the hacker behind this major heist? After a lengthy investigation, they found the origin of this hacker. It was from North Korea, under the name Lazarus Group. Little is known about the group, though the FBI has painted a detailed portrait of one suspect. His name is Park Jin-hyuk. The FBI describes him as a computer programmer who graduated from one of the country's top universities and went to work for a North Korean company to create online gaming and gambling programs for clients around the world. According to an FBI investigator, his activity was come from Pyongyang, the North Korean capital. Investigators believe most of the stolen money ended up in the tiny Chinese territory before being sent back to North Korea. Until now, the Lazarus Group still remain mystery, and nobody knows about its existence.